Have you ever noticed that the most respected people in your life are the hardest to reach? Think about that for a moment. The most valuable, the most impactful, the most successful individuals guard their time with uncompromising vigilance. Why? Because when you stop being available, everything changes. Most people live their entire lives at the mercy of other people's demands. They wonder why success eludes them while they respond to every ring, every message, every request. They've trained the world that they're always available, always on call, always ready to drop what matters most, to handle what matters least. I learned this lesson the hard way. For years I said yes to everything. Every meeting, every favor, every opportunity that crossed my path. I believed that being available was the path to success. I thought my willingness to accommodate everyone would lead to more opportunities, more relationships, more advancement. But I was wrong. Completely and utterly wrong. The turning point came when my mentor asked me a simple question: who's in charge of your day? At first I didn't understand. I am, I replied confidently. He just smiled and said, let's find out. Show me your calendar for the last month. As I reviewed my schedule, the uncomfortable truth emerged. My days weren't mine at all. They belonged to everyone else. Meetings I didn't need to attend. Problems I didn't need to solve. Emergencies that weren't mine to fix. I had surrendered control of my most precious resource, my time, to whoever asked for it. Starting tomorrow, my mentor said, you're going to protect 4 hours each day for your most important work. No exceptions. That decision changed everything. Within weeks, something remarkable happened. The constant stream of interruptions began to slow. People started solving problems without me, and the quality of my work improved dramatically. Within months, my income doubled. Not because I worked more hours, but because I worked fewer hours with greater focus on what actually produced results. When you stop being available, everything changes. I want you to consider a critical question. Who currently has unlimited access to your time, your attention, your energy? Think carefully before answering, because that list reveals who truly controls your life. Most people live with a fundamental misconception about success. They believe that success comes from saying yes to more opportunities, more responsibilities, more commitments. But the truth is exactly the opposite. Success doesn't come from saying yes to more. It comes from saying no to almost everything. The mathematics of this principle are straightforward. There are 24 hours in your day, no more. No matter how successful you become, you'll never get more time than anyone else. But most people scatter these precious hours across dozens of activities, none of which receive enough attention to yield remarkable results. Successful people understand the power of concentration. They direct their finite time toward a small number of high-value activities. They recognize that extraordinary results require extraordinary focus, and extraordinary focus requires extraordinary boundaries. Consider this profound truth. Your level of success will rarely exceed your level of personal development. And personal development requires time, focused, uninterrupted time. Time to think, time to plan, time to create, time to execute with excellence. Yet most people never create this time. They're too busy responding to other people's priorities. The principle of selective availability operates on the foundation of personal economics. In economics, value is determined by the relationship between supply and demand. When supply increases while demand remains constant, value decreases. When supply decreases while demand remains constant, value increases. Apply this principle to yourself. When you make yourself constantly available, unlimited supply, your perceived value inevitably declines. People begin to take your time, your skills, your contributions for granted. But when you become selectively available, limited supply, your perceived value increases dramatically. This isn't manipulation. It's a fundamental law of human psychology and economics. I'm not suggesting you become inaccessible to everyone. That's isolation, not selective availability. What I am suggesting is that you become exceptionally deliberate about who has access to you, when they have access, and for what purpose. There's a critical distinction between accessibility and availability. Accessibility means people can reach you through appropriate channels at appropriate times. Availability means people can interrupt you anytime for anything. Successful people remain accessible to the right people for the right reasons, but they're rarely available for random interruptions or low-value activities. Consider the consequences of perpetual availability. When you train people that you're always available, you create 5 destructive patterns that undermine your effectiveness and diminish your impact. First, you signal that your time holds little value. Even if you never say it aloud, your behavior broadcasts the message. My time isn't valuable enough to protect, and people will believe you. They'll treat your time exactly as you treat it, as a commodity to be consumed, rather than an asset to be invested. Second, you condition others to depend on you inappropriately. When you're always available to solve problems, people stop solving problems for themselves. Your constant availability creates dependency rather than capability in those around you. Third, you establish expectations you cannot sustainably fulfill. The pattern of immediate response creates the expectation of immediate response. Miss one call, one message, one request, and you've created disappointment where there should be none. Fourth, you fragment your focus and diminish your effectiveness. Neuroscience confirms that the human brain requires approximately 23 minutes to fully re-engage with a complex task after an interruption. If you're interrupted every 15 minutes, you never reach your cognitive peak. You operate permanently at a fraction of your potential. Fifth, you sacrifice the deep work that creates extraordinary value. The most valuable contributions, the innovations, solutions, and creations that transform organizations and industries emerge from sustained concentration, not fragmented attention. These 5 patterns create a life of reactivity rather than proactivity. You become excellent at responding but terrible at initiating. You become skilled at putting out fires but unable to build anything that lasts. You become indispensable for the moment but irrelevant for the future. When you stop being available, everything changes. The shift from perpetual availability to selective availability requires a fundamental change in mindset. You must transition from being a people pleaser to becoming a value creator. People pleasers make decisions based on short-term approval. They say yes to avoid disappointment, confrontation, or rejection. Their primary question is, will this make them happy with me right now? Value creators make decisions based on long-term impact. They evaluate opportunities against their highest priorities and deepest commitments. Their primary question is, will this create meaningful value over time? This mental shift revolutionizes how you allocate your most precious resource, your time. You begin evaluating opportunities not by who asks or how urgently they ask, but by what results those opportunities will generate. You become ruthlessly selective about what deserves your attention and what doesn't. But this shift creates a predictable challenge. People accustomed to your constant availability will resist your boundaries. Their resistance doesn't mean your boundaries are wrong. It means your boundaries are working. When someone complains about your reduced availability, recognize it as confirmation that your previous patterns were unsustainable. Their discomfort is a necessary part of establishing healthier, more sustainable relationships. How do you navigate this transition effectively? Start with clarity about your highest priorities. What work genuinely matters? What relationships are truly central to your life? What activities generate the greatest long-term value? These priorities become the filter through which you evaluate demands on your time. Next, establish clear boundaries and communicate them directly. Tell people when you're available and when you're not. Create systems that protect your focus time from interruptions. Turn off notifications. Close your door. Work in a different location if necessary. Then, prepare for pushback and respond with calm consistency. When someone crosses your boundaries, and they will gently but firmly reinforce them, remember that you're establishing new patterns that will serve everyone better in the long run. Finally, deliver exceptional value during your periods of availability. When you are present, be fully present. Listen attentively. Contribute meaningfully. Solve problems decisively. Your effectiveness during these focused interactions will gradually reconcile others to your new patterns. The paradox of selective availability is that it ultimately makes you more valuable to others, not less. When you protect your time for high-value work, you bring more wisdom, more energy, more creativity, and more solutions to the table. You become less available but more impactful. Consider these immediate action steps for reclaiming your time. First, conduct a time audit. Track how you spend every hour for 1 week. Identify the activities that advance your highest priorities and those that don't. Be brutally honest about where your time actually goes versus where it should go. Second, identify your power hours. Those periods when your energy and focus naturally peak. Reserve these hours exclusively for your most important work. No meetings, no calls, no exceptions. Third, establish specific times for reactive work. Designate particular hours for responding to messages, returning calls, and handling administrative tasks. Contain these activities within their allocated windows. Fourth, create buffers between appointments. End meetings 5 minutes early. Leave transition time between commitments. Stop booking yourself solid from morning until night. These buffers preserve your energy and prevent a single delay from derailing your entire day. Fifth, practice saying no with respect and clarity. You don't need elaborate excuses or apologies. A simple "that doesn't work for me" or "I'm not taking on new commitments right now" is sufficient. Remember that every yes to something unimportant is a no to something essential. Sixth, delegate aggressively. Identify tasks others could handle with adequate training and systematically remove them from your plate. Even if you could do something doesn't mean you should do it. Seventh, batch similar activities. Group meetings on specific days. Process emails at designated times. Make calls during particular blocks. Batching reduces the mental energy lost in context switching and dramatically increases your efficiency. The transformation begins with a single decision. From this moment forward, your time belongs to you. Not to whoever wants it. Not to whoever demands it. Not to whoever happened to reach you first. Your time belongs to you to invest in accordance with your highest values and most important goals. When you make this decision, when you stop being perpetually available and start being strategically selective, everything changes. Your productivity multiplies. Your stress diminishes. Your impact expands. Your value increases. Your satisfaction deepens. Most importantly, you replace the frenetic activity that characterizes most lives with the purposeful progress that defines extraordinary achievement. The question isn't whether you can afford to reduce your availability. The question is whether you can afford not to. Consider what happens when farmers plant crops too close together. Each plant competes for the same limited nutrients. Each struggles for the same patch of sunlight. None receive sufficient resources to thrive. The result, a mediocre harvest of stunted plants. Wise farmers understand the principle of proper spacing. They know that plants need room to develop strong roots, sturdy stalks, and abundant fruit. They deliberately leave space between plants, not to waste ground but to maximize yield. Your commitments follow the same principle. When you crowd your life with too many responsibilities, too many relationships, too many activities, none receive enough of you to flourish. Everything gets a fraction of your attention, but nothing gets enough to become exceptional. Selective availability creates the proper spacing in your life. It gives your most important work room to develop. It allows your most valuable relationships space to deepen. It provides your most meaningful commitments time to mature. The most successful people aren't accessible to everyone. They're accessible to the right people for the right reasons at the right times. They understand that their impact depends not on how many people they please in the moment, but on how much value they create over time. When you stop being available for everything, you become available for anything truly important. You create margin in your life, space to think, room to respond, capacity to create. This margin becomes the soil in which opportunity takes root. The mathematics of this principle are straightforward. There are 24 hours in your day, no more. No matter how successful you become, you'll never get more time than anyone else. But most people scatter these precious hours across dozens of activities, none of which receive enough attention to yield remarkable results. Where your time goes, your life goes. It's that simple and that profound. Everything valuable in your life, your health, your relationships, your skills, your achievements exists because you invested time in it. Everything missing from your life is absent because you didn't. This principle of selective investment forms the foundation of personal mastery. Extraordinary lives aren't created by extraordinary circumstances. They're created by ordinary people who make extraordinary decisions about how they invest their time day after day, year after year. Think of yourself as a farmer. Not the modern industrial farmer with massive machinery and chemical shortcuts, but the traditional farmer whose success depends entirely on understanding natural principles and working in harmony with them. What does the farmer know that most people forget? First, that all meaningful growth follows a season. There's a time to plant, a time to nurture, a time to harvest, and a time to rest. Skip any season, rush any process, and the results suffer dramatically. Most people want to harvest where they haven't planted. They want to reap where they haven't sown. They want results without process, achievement without preparation, success without development. But the farmer knows better. The farmer understands that extraordinary harvests come from extraordinary patience combined with extraordinary effort, applied at exactly the right time. Are you respecting the seasons in your own development? Are you planting the knowledge, skills, and habits that will yield a harvest worth reaping? Or are you waiting for success to arrive without investment? The farmer also understands that small actions repeated consistently over time yield results far greater than their apparent significance. The slight difference between planting seeds 2 inches deep versus 4 inches deep seems inconsequential on planting day. But by harvest time, that small difference has multiplied into crop yields that vary by tons. Your daily habits follow the same pattern. Reading 10 pages daily instead of watching an hour of entertainment seems insignificant today. But over a year, that's 3,650 pages, approximately 12 books containing knowledge, insights, and ideas that can transform your effectiveness. Over 5 years, that's 60 books. Over a decade, 120 books. That single habit, maintained consistently, will place you among the most well-read people in our society. And that's just one habit. What happens when you apply this principle to your health? 10 minutes of exercise daily versus none. A single decision about what to eat or not eat at each meal. 8 hours of sleep instead of 6. Each choice appears small in isolation, but compound these choices across months and years, and they create dramatic differences in energy, clarity, stamina, and longevity. What happens when you apply this principle to your relationships? 5 minutes of undivided attention versus none. 1 meaningful conversation versus 1 argument avoided. 1 commitment kept versus 1 promise broken. Each interaction seems minor in the moment, but accumulated over time, these small choices create marriages that flourish instead of fail, children who thrive instead of struggle, friendships that nourish instead of drain. What happens when you apply this principle to your work? 15 minutes planning your day versus starting without direction. 1 hour protected from interruptions versus 1 hour fragmented by distractions. 1 skill practiced deliberately versus practiced haphazardly. 1 customer served exceptionally versus adequately. These individual decisions appear inconsequential, but compounded across a career, they create extraordinary achievement instead of mediocre performance. This is the compound effect of daily habits on your success trajectory. Small disciplines practiced consistently create massive differences over time. Most people overestimate what they can accomplish in a day and underestimate what they can accomplish in a decade. They focus on dramatic changes that are unsustainable rather than small improvements that are unstoppable. But those who achieve mastery think differently. They understand that success isn't determined by intensity in the moment, but by consistency over time. They trust the process even when progress seems imperceptible. They maintain disciplines even when rewards seem distant. This brings us to another fundamental truth. Life operates in predictable patterns. Those who recognize these patterns gain tremendous advantage over those who don't. They position themselves to benefit from forces that would otherwise work against them. Consider the pattern of challenge and opportunity. Throughout history, in every economy and every industry, periods of expansion follow periods of contraction. Seasons of abundance follow seasons of scarcity. Windows of extraordinary opportunity follow windows of extreme challenge. Most people miss this pattern. During difficult times, they become paralyzed by fear and uncertainty. They retreat, retract, and retain whatever resources they possess. They focus exclusively on survival and miss the seeds of opportunity hidden within the challenge. Then, when conditions improve, they finally gather enough confidence to act. But by then, the extraordinary opportunity has passed. They buy at the peak rather than the valley. They enter markets at their most competitive rather than their most accessible. They launch initiatives when resources are most expensive rather than most available. Those who recognize the pattern operate differently. They prepare during good times for the challenges that will inevitably come. They build reserves, develop capabilities, and strengthen foundations while others focus solely on expansion. When conditions deteriorate, they're positioned to withstand the pressure. More importantly, during challenging times, they actively seek the opportunities that others miss. While maintaining appropriate caution, they invest when assets are undervalued, acquire talent when it's available, and develop innovations when competitors are focused merely on maintenance. This counter-cyclical approach, preparing for storms during fair weather and seeking opportunities during storms, creates extraordinary advantages over time. Are you recognizing the patterns in your own life? Are you using periods of stability to prepare for periods of disruption? Are you using periods of disruption to identify opportunities others overlook? The pattern of effort and results creates another predictable cycle that shapes success or failure. Most meaningful achievements require sustained effort before producing visible results. There's a gap, sometimes substantial, between input and output, between action and outcome, between work and reward. Those who don't understand this pattern typically start strong but quit early. They put in days or weeks of dedicated effort, see little tangible progress, and conclude that their approach isn't working. They abandon the very activities that would eventually yield the results they desire, if only they persisted through the gap. Those who understand the pattern maintain their disciplines even when evidence of progress remains elusive. They trust that consistent, correct effort always yields results, even when those results remain temporarily invisible. They focus on the quality of their inputs rather than the immediate presence of outputs. Here's the surprising truth. The gap between effort and results often closes suddenly, rather than gradually. After weeks or months of apparent stagnation, progress accelerates dramatically. The writer who labored for a year suddenly produces a breakthrough manuscript. The business that struggled for 18 months suddenly achieves profitability. The relationship that seemed unchanged despite months of effort suddenly transforms. These overnight successes are actually the delayed but inevitable results of sustained effort applied against resistance. Are you maintaining your disciplines even when results seem distant? Are you trusting the process even when progress seems imperceptible? Or are you changing direction every time the wind shifts? The most successful people focus ruthlessly on activities within their control and release attachment to outcomes beyond their control. They understand that they can control their efforts, but not the timing of their harvest. They can control their responses, but not external circumstances. They can control their attitudes, but not others' actions. This focus on controllable factors creates tremendous psychological advantage. While others exhaust themselves fighting conditions they cannot change, masters direct their energy exclusively toward variables they can influence. They don't waste emotional resources on circumstances beyond their power. Consider how this principle applies to the 4 quadrants of time management that transform productivity. The first quadrant contains activities that are both urgent and important, genuine crises and true deadlines that require immediate attention. Most people spend their lives reacting to this quadrant, rushing from emergency to emergency, deadline to deadline. They believe they're being productive because they're busy with legitimate demands, but they're trapped in a reactive cycle that prevents strategic progress. The second quadrant contains activities that are important but not urgent: planning, prevention, preparation, relationship building, skill development, and strategic thinking. These activities create your future. They prevent crises, build capabilities, strengthen foundations, and position you for extraordinary achievement. But because they lack urgency, most people neglect them entirely. The third quadrant contains activities that are urgent but not important: interruptions, unnecessary meetings, many phone calls, and most emails. These activities create the illusion of productivity while consuming time that could be invested in truly important work. Because they carry the emotional trigger of urgency, most people respond to them reflexively rather than evaluating their actual importance. The fourth quadrant contains activities that are neither urgent nor important: time wasters, distractions, and irrelevant tasks. While most people recognize the low value of these activities, they often slide into them unconsciously, especially when mentally fatigued. Masters of personal productivity allocate the majority of their time to second quadrant activities, those important but not yet urgent areas that create their future. They minimize time spent in the third and fourth quadrants by delegating, automating, eliminating, or containing low-value activities. And they prevent many first quadrant crises through effective second quadrant preparation. This disciplined focus on importance rather than urgency transforms not just productivity, but possibility. While others exhaust themselves handling emergencies, masters build capabilities, relationships, and advantages that make extraordinary achievement not just possible, but inevitable. Are you directing your best time and energy toward activities that create your future, or are you consumed by the tyranny of the urgent? The ability to recognize and maximize opportunity windows represents another discipline of personal mastery. In every life, certain moments offer disproportionate potential for advancement, key relationships that could be formed, critical skills that could be acquired, strategic positions that could be secured. Most people miss these windows entirely. They're so consumed by routine demands but they fail to notice extraordinary opportunities. Or they recognize the opportunities, but hesitate until the windows close. Or they see the opportunities and want to pursue them, but lack the preparation to capitalize on them. Masters operate differently. They maintain constant awareness of potential opportunity windows. They prepare systematically for opportunities they cannot predict, but know will eventually appear. And when those windows open, they move decisively to maximize them. This approach requires 3 specific practices. First, maintaining margin in your life. When you're overcommitted financially, chronologically, and emotionally, you lack the resources to pursue unexpected opportunities. You become a prisoner of your existing commitments, unable to adjust when extraordinary possibilities emerge. Second, developing capabilities in advance of opportunities. The time to prepare for extraordinary opportunities is long before they appear. By systematically building knowledge, skills, resources, and relationships, you position yourself to maximize windows when they open. Third, deciding quickly when genuine opportunities emerge. Analysis is important, but excessive deliberation often results in missed windows. When you've prepared properly and recognized a legitimate opportunity, decisive action creates advantage. But these disciplines mean nothing without implementation. Knowledge without action creates no value. Insight without execution produces no results. Understanding without application yields no transformation. That brings us to the essential question: how do you translate these principles into daily practices that produce extraordinary results? The first step requires breaking the cycle of self-sabotage and excuse-making that keeps most people trapped in mediocrity. Until you confront these destructive patterns, no strategy will save you. Listen carefully to the language you use when explaining why you haven't achieved your goals. I don't have enough time. I don't have the right connections. The economy is challenging. My boss doesn't appreciate me. I'm too tired after work. I'll start tomorrow when conditions are better. These statements aren't explanations. They're excuses. They're stories you tell yourself to justify inaction, avoid discomfort, and escape responsibility. They're the comfortable lies that keep you from facing uncomfortable truths. The uncomfortable truth is that your current results reflect your past choices, not your circumstances, not your background, not your limitations. Your health reflects your eating and exercise decisions. Your finances reflect your earning and spending decisions. Your relationships reflect your communication and commitment decisions. This truth feels harsh until you recognize its liberating power. If your results come from your choices, then different choices will produce different results. You aren't stuck with your current reality unless you're stuck with your current decisions. Breaking free from excuses requires brutal honesty. Start by identifying your 3 most common justifications for not doing what you know you should. Write them down. Look at them in black and white. Say them aloud. Recognize them as the prison bars they truly are. Next, replace each excuse with its corresponding truth. I don't have enough time becomes I haven't made this a priority. I don't have the right connections becomes I haven't consistently reached out to build relationships. The economy is challenging becomes I need to create value regardless of external conditions. This shift from excuses to ownership transforms your relationship with reality. You stop being a victim of circumstances and start being the architect of your results. You replace reactivity with responsibility, helplessness with autonomy, and complaint with commitment. The contrast between success psychology and mediocrity mindset reveals why some people consistently achieve extraordinary results while others remain permanently stuck. This contrast isn't about intelligence, talent, or opportunity. It's about how you think, what you believe, and how you respond to challenges. The mediocrity mindset focuses on survival. It seeks comfort, avoids risk, and protects what it has. When facing challenges, it retreats to safety, clings to the familiar, and chooses certainty over possibility. Its primary question is, how can I avoid pain? The success mindset focuses on growth. It seeks improvement, embraces calculated risk, and pursues what could be. When facing challenges, it advances through obstacles, experiments with new approaches, and chooses possibility over certainty. Its primary question is, how can I create value? The mediocrity mindset believes resources determine results. It waits for the right conditions, the right support, the right timing before taking action. It says, when I have enough time, money, connections, and support, then I'll accomplish something significant. The success mindset believes resourcefulness determines results. It creates favorable conditions, builds necessary support, and makes timing work instead of waiting for it. It says, I'll find a way to accomplish something significant, and that achievement will attract more time, money, connections, and support. The mediocrity mindset interprets failure as final. It sees setbacks as evidence of personal deficiency, confirmation of impossible odds, and justification for surrender. When plans don't work, it abandons not just the approach but the goal itself. The success mindset interprets failure as feedback. It sees setbacks as sources of essential information, opportunities for necessary correction, and catalysts for personal growth. When plans don't work, it changes strategies while maintaining commitment to the outcome. The mediocrity mindset focuses on problems. It dwells on obstacles, magnifies difficulties, and fixates on reasons why goals can't be achieved. It invests mental energy in explaining why what it wants remains impossible. The success mindset focuses on solutions. It acknowledges obstacles honestly, but immediately begins identifying possible approaches, available resources, and alternative paths. It invests mental energy in discovering how what it wants can be achieved. Which mindset dominates your thinking? Which perspective shapes your responses to challenges? Which pattern directs your attention toward problems or toward solutions, toward excuses or toward opportunities, toward limitations or toward possibilities? Your mindset isn't fixed, it's malleable. Through conscious choice and consistent practice, you can systematically replace mediocrity thinking with success thinking. But this transformation requires more than intellectual understanding. It demands practical implementation. 7 daily practices separate the extraordinary from the ordinary. These aren't abstract concepts or inspirational platitudes. They're concrete disciplines that, practiced consistently, produce remarkable results in any field, under any conditions, against any odds. The first practice: start your day with purpose rather than distraction. Most people begin their mornings by immediately ingesting other people's priorities, problems, and agendas. They check messages, scan headlines, and respond to whatever shouts loudest. Before they've completed their first cup of coffee, their attention has been fragmented into dozens of directions. Extraordinary achievers protect their mornings ferociously. They begin each day with focused activities that center their thinking, clarify their priorities, and direct their energy. They review their most important goals, visualize successful outcomes, read material that elevates their thinking, and plan their day before external demands invade it. This morning ritual isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. Your mind is most receptive during the first hour after waking. What you place in your consciousness during this golden hour shapes everything that follows. Fill it with purpose, and purpose will permeate your day. Fill it with distraction, and distraction will dominate your day. What do you currently place in your mind during your first waking hour? Does it move you toward your highest priorities or away from them? Does it focus your attention or fracture it? Does it elevate your thinking or diminish it? The second practice: schedule your priorities rather than prioritizing your schedule. Most people look at their calendar, see what's already scheduled, and try to work around existing appointments. This approach guarantees that urgent matters will continually displace important ones. Extraordinary achievers reverse this process. They identify their most important work, block time for those activities first, and schedule everything else around these protected periods. They don't try to find time for what matters most. They make time by designating it in advance. This approach requires courage. You'll need to decline meetings that conflict with your blocked time. You'll need to delay responses during your protected periods. You'll need to disappoint some people in the short term to deliver exceptional value in the long term. Are you scheduling your priorities, or are you merely prioritizing what's already on your schedule? Are you controlling your calendar, or is your calendar controlling you? The third practice: focus on contribution rather than achievement. Most people approach work with the primary question, what can I accomplish today? This achievement orientation sounds productive, but it creates a perpetual sense of inadequacy. No matter how much you achieve, something always remains undone. Extraordinary performers ask a different question: what can I contribute today? This contribution orientation transforms how you work and how you feel about your work. It directs attention toward value creation rather than task completion. It shifts focus from what you get to what you give. This change in perspective alters everything from your motivation to your effectiveness. Tasks that seem burdensome when viewed as achievements to complete become meaningful when viewed as contributions to make. Problems that seemed insurmountable when seen as obstacles to your progress become manageable when seen as opportunities for your contribution. Are you primarily focused on what you can accomplish or what you can contribute? Are you working to check boxes or are you working to create value? The fourth practice, act from conviction rather than convenience. Most people make decisions based primarily on what's easy, comfortable, or immediately rewarding. They follow the path of least resistance and wonder why they arrive at destinations that don't satisfy them. Extraordinary performers make decisions based primarily on their deepest values, most important goals, and highest priorities. They regularly choose short-term discomfort in service of long-term fulfillment. They willingly endure temporary inconvenience to create lasting improvement. This values-driven approach provides stability amid changing circumstances. When external conditions fluctuate, internal commitments remain constant. When motivation ebbs, conviction continues. When temptation beckons, principle prevails. Are your daily decisions driven primarily by convenience or by conviction? Are you choosing what's easy in the moment or what's aligned with your values? Are you pursuing immediate comfort or enduring satisfaction? The fifth practice, seek growth rather than comfort. Most people organize their lives around the pursuit of comfort. They avoid situations that create anxiety, activities that generate struggle, and relationships that produce friction. They choose the familiar over the challenging, the predictable over the demanding. Extraordinary performers recognize that significant growth occurs only through significant challenge. They deliberately place themselves in situations that test their capabilities, expose their weaknesses, and demand their best. They view discomfort not as a warning to retreat, but as a signal of expansion. This growth orientation transforms obstacles from problems to avoid into opportunities to develop. Difficult people become teachers of patience. Complex challenges become builders of capability. Frustrating setbacks become sources of resilience. Are you primarily seeking comfort or growth? Are you choosing situations based on ease or opportunity? Are you avoiding difficulty, or are you using it to develop? The sixth practice, own outcomes rather than explanations. Most people invest significant energy explaining why they haven't achieved their goals. They develop elaborate rationales for why circumstances prevented their success, opportunities didn't materialize, or resources proved insufficient. Extraordinary performers invest that same energy creating results despite constraints. They focus exclusively on factors within their control and refuse to waste mental capacity on variables they can't influence. When faced with obstacles, they ask, what can I do with what I have from where I am? This ownership mentality transforms how you respond to adversity. Instead of using difficult conditions to justify poor results, you use difficult conditions to demonstrate your resourcefulness. Instead of waiting for perfect circumstances, you maximize imperfect ones. Are you investing more energy in explaining lack of results or in creating results? Are you focusing primarily on why you can't succeed or how you can succeed? Are you waiting for optimal conditions or optimizing current conditions? The seventh practice, build momentum through immediate, consistent action. Most people delay implementation until they feel motivated, prepared, or certain. They wait for inspiration before starting, confidence before continuing, and perfection before completing. Extraordinary performers reverse this equation. They take action to generate motivation rather than waiting for motivation to prompt action. They start before they feel ready, continue before they feel confident, and complete before they achieve perfection. This bias toward action creates the phenomenon of momentum, the force that builds through consistent movement. Small actions performed consistently create force that makes subsequent actions easier. Tasks that seemed overwhelming when viewed from a standstill become manageable when approached with momentum. Are you waiting to feel motivated before taking action, or are you taking action to create motivation? Are you delaying until conditions seem perfect, or are you starting with conditions as they are? Are you building momentum through consistent activity, or are you losing momentum through hesitation? These 7 practices, starting with purpose, scheduling priorities, focusing on contribution, acting from conviction, seeking growth, owning outcomes, and building momentum form the foundation of extraordinary achievement. Implemented consistently, they transform not just your results, but your identity. The power of environment in supporting or undermining your choices cannot be overstated. You don't make decisions in a vacuum. Your surroundings, relationships, and routines exert tremendous influence on your choices, often without your awareness. Most people drastically underestimate this environmental effect. They attempt to change behaviors without changing environments. They try to develop new habits while maintaining old triggers. They seek to evolve while remaining in settings designed to maintain their previous identity. Extraordinary performers deliberately engineer environments that support their highest aspirations rather than reinforce their existing limitations. They surround themselves with people who elevate rather than diminish them. They create spaces that prompt productive behaviors rather than counterproductive ones. They establish routines that direct energy toward important activities rather than dissipate it across trivial ones. This environmental design vastly reduces the willpower required for transformation. When your surroundings automatically prompt desired behaviors, you don't need superhuman discipline to maintain them. When your relationships naturally reinforce your aspirations, you don't need extraordinary motivation to pursue them. Have you engineered your environment to support your highest goals? Do your surroundings prompt behaviors aligned with your aspirations? Do your relationships reinforce your commitment to growth? These practical frameworks for eliminating negative patterns create sustainable transformation rather than temporary change. Most improvement efforts fail because they focus on altering surface behaviors without addressing root causes. They treat symptoms while ignoring systems. Extraordinary performers recognize that lasting change requires systematic intervention. They identify triggers that prompt unproductive behaviors and modify or eliminate those triggers. They recognize cues that initiate negative spirals and interrupt those sequences. They identify needs that drive counterproductive actions and develop healthier ways to meet those needs. This systematic approach transforms change from a willpower battle you'll eventually lose into an environmental redesign that supports sustainable improvement. It converts personal growth from a series of painful sacrifices into a sequence of strategic adjustments. The ultimate distinction between extraordinary achievement and permanent mediocrity lies in this fundamental choice. Will you design your life or merely react to circumstances? Will you create conditions that support your aspirations, or will you accept conditions as they are? Will you build systems that produce excellence, or will you hope excellence somehow emerges from chaos? Designing your life begins with clarity about your deepest values, most important goals, and highest priorities. Without this clarity, you have no standard against which to evaluate opportunities, no filter through which to screen distractions, no compass by which to navigate decisions. With this clarity established, you can systematically align your schedule, relationships, environment, and activities with what matters most. You can eliminate the gap between what you say is important and where you actually invest your time. You can reduce the friction between what you want to achieve and what your surroundings support. Most people drift through life, responding to whatever current carries them, adapting to whatever shore receives them. They surrender authorship of their story to external forces. They accept roles assigned rather than chosen, paths presented rather than created, limitations imposed rather than challenged. Extraordinary performers chart their course, navigate towards selected destinations, and overcome obstacles that block their progress. They claim authorship of their story. They choose roles aligned with their capabilities, create paths toward meaningful objectives, and challenge limitations that constrain their contribution. The difference isn't talent, intelligence, or opportunity. The difference is choice. The choice to stop accepting life as it happens to you and start creating life as you want it to be. When you stop being available to every demand and start being deliberate about your focus, everything changes. When you stop accepting whatever comes and start selecting what enters your life, everything changes. When you stop responding to every request and start directing your energy toward what matters most, everything changes. The transformation begins the moment you decide that your time is too valuable to waste, your potential is too significant to squander, and your contribution is too important to compromise. It accelerates when you translate that decision into daily disciplines that turn intention into reality. The choice is yours. No one else can make it for you. No one else should make it for you. But everyone who depends on you, believes in you, and needs what only you can contribute will be affected by what you decide. Choose well. Choose today. Choose as if your life depends on it, because it does. When you stop being available, everything changes.